ACORN is a group that helps poor people. It is known as the Association of Community Organizers for Reform.
You know, I was coming here to make sure everything was okay.
13-year-old girl.
I deal with kids all the time, but...
The day I started, one worker picked up shackled birds and punched them in the necks. I guess he was bored or thought it was fun.
If undercover reporters and their sensationalism bother you today, if you think the hidden cameras, the fake names, the guerrilla tactics have gone too far, you're not alone. But before you decide that this is just some modern YouTube problem, you need to see where it started. Because long before the internet, the same battles over fake identities and stolen truths were being fought in the early days of our society. And people got upset then. But you know what? America came out better because of it. Let's work our way through some of the best undercover journalists of the past and present and find out why telling a lie might be the only path to justice in a world governed by secrets. Think of this journey as looking through a dirty mirror. It's messy, it's uncomfortable, and it's definitely not pretty. But it might be the only way to see the reflection of a system that's been lying to you for years. A young woman shivers on a hard bed behind iron bars. The year? 1887. By all accounts, she's just another lost soul confined to Blackwell's Island insane asylum, rocking back and forth, eyes distant, perhaps mad. But unknown to the doctors and nurses who shout and jeer at her, this woman isn't insane at all. Her name is Nellie Bly, and she's an undercover reporter. Each cruel jolt of the staff's fists, each bowl of rancid soup, each rat scurrying across the dormitory floor, she records it all in her mind. After 10 torturous days, Nellie Bly will walk out of this nightmare and blow the whistle on an entire system. Her expose will spark a grand jury investigation, shocking a nation into reform. Our journey begins in the late 19th century, the Gilded Age, when a few daring reporters pioneered a new kind of journalism. They called them stunt girls, a dismissive label for women who went undercover to report on society's ills. But these women were anything but trivial. They exposed truths no one else could reach. Take Nellie. Born Elizabeth Cochrane, she reinvented herself as a reporter hungry for serious news. In 1887, Bly accepted an assignment that most would consider suicidal. Pretend to be insane to get committed to an asylum, then report from the inside. After practicing deranged expressions in front of a mirror, she got herself admitted to the women's lunatic asylum on Blackwell's Island. What she witnessed there was more nightmarish than anyone imagined. Ice-cold baths that left patients screaming. Inedible food crawling with vermin. Nurses abusing and mocking the women in their care. What accepting torture would produce insanity quicker than this treatment, Bly wrote, describing how even a sane woman could be driven mad by such horrors. When Bly's articles, 10 Days in a Madhouse, hit the pages of Joseph Pulitzer's New York World, readers and officials were aghast. Her revelations led to a grand jury investigation and an increase in funding to improve conditions for the mentally ill. One solitary undercover assignment, a young woman's willingness to live a lie for 10 days, changed how New York cared for its most vulnerable. This was the first time the public saw the power of the dirty mirror. Bly's dirty method of feigning insanity was the only way to reflect the clean, hard truth of what was happening behind those asylum walls. It also made Nellie Bly a household name, proving the power of undercover journalism. Nellie Bly wasn't the first to pull off such a feat. Julius Chambers, a New York Tribune reporter, had done it 15 years earlier. In 1872, Chambers had himself committed to the Bloomingdale Insane Asylum under a false identity. After 10 days, his editors sprung him out, and his expose freed 12 patients who had been unjustly held as insane. The asylum's leadership was sacked and reforms were put in place. Undercover journalism was already proving its worth in lives saved and injustices revealed. Other trailblazers followed. In the early 1900s, investigative writers of the Progressive era embraced deception as a tool for truth. Perhaps the most famous was Upton Sinclair, who went undercover in 1904 collecting information in Chicago's brutal stockyards. Sinclair's aim was to expose the exploitation of immigrant labor. But what he found was so stomach-churning, rat-infested, rotten meat being packed for dinner tables across America, that it overshadowed everything else. His novel, The Jungle, based on 7 weeks undercover, sparked public outrage. "I aimed at the public's heart and by accident I hit its stomach," Sinclair quipped. The public outcry from his work led to federal food safety laws. Like Bly, Sinclair had to immerse himself in danger to pull the curtain back. Each night he scribbled notes in secret, writing down every filthy detail from memory because in those days there were no hidden cameras to record the evidence. But the era of relying on a reporter's memory, well, that was about to end. The written word was being replaced by something far more dangerous to the powerful, a lens that never forgets. For a few decades, big undercover exposés seemed to fade away. American journalism hit a lull in undercover work from the 1930s through the mid-20th century. There were occasional flashes, reporters infiltrating the Ku Klux Klan or investigating sweatshops, but nothing like the frenetic era of Bly and Sinclair. It wasn't until after the 1970s, in the post-Watergate investigative boom, that going undercover staged a major comeback. Enter the age of television. In 1968, CBS debuted 60 Minutes, a TV magazine that specialized in in-depth investigations.
Good evening. This is 60 Minutes. It's a kind of a magazine for television.
And if this broadcast does what we hope it will do, it will report reality. We'll see. I'm Mike Wallace.
We will indeed.
Suddenly, undercover journalism wasn't just in newspapers or books, it was beaming into living rooms every Sunday night. By the 1970s and 80s, hidden cameras and microphone in the briefcase stunts became tools of the trade for TV reporters. If earlier undercover reporters had to rely on memory and scribbled notes, now technology was catching up. Pinhole cameras, wireless mics, and later, tiny GoPros and smartphones meant you could see the truth with your own eyes.
Let's do this thing!
Undercover investigations flourished in this new medium. From exposing fraudulent car repair shops to unmasking corrupt officials, journalists pushed the limits. They often lied about their names or backgrounds to gain access to places the public could not ordinarily see. And crucially, they recorded what they saw as proof. Audiences were captivated. Here was tangible, visual evidence of wrongdoing, not just secondhand descriptions. By the late 1980s and early 1990s, shows like Primetime Live and Dateline NBC were regularly featuring undercover segments, and ratings were soaring. But with bigger risks came bigger targets and bigger consequences. Undercover journalists were no longer just aiming at outlier institutions like asylums. They were going after powerful corporations, government agencies. And those targets, once exposed, began to fight back in court. It's 1992 in the American South. Two women, Susan Barnett and Lynn Dale, producers for ABC's Primetime Live, walk into Food Lion grocery stores in North Carolina, not as journalists, but as newly hired employees in the meat department. They've used fake names and references on their job applications, hiding their ABC affiliation. Tucked in their wigs and under their uniforms are tiny hidden cameras. For weeks, they smile at customers by day, and after hours, film horrifying food safety violations by night. What they capture is stomach-turning. Meat so spoiled it's slimy and smells foul, being soaked in bleach to mask the odor, and then repackaged for sale. Cheese gnawed by rats on the shelves, quietly returned to stock to be sold later. Employees laughing about how to redate old poultry to make it look fresh.
I don't think it's been changed in a long time.
Probably not.
Isn't there a schedule where you're supposed to change the salads?
I'm sure there is. We don't have one.
Really? They never get changed, do they?
Some of them eventually run out.
All of it caught on tape. In November 1992, ABC airs the undercover footage on Primetime Live and accuses Food Lion of a pattern of dangerously unsanitary practices. The public is outraged. Food Lion's reputation plummets and customers flee. It looks like a clear win for investigative journalism in the court of public opinion, but the story, it's far from over. Food Lion, furious at the ambush, doesn't sue for defamation. They never claim the broadcasts were false. Instead, they take a craftier approach. They sue ABC for fraud, breach of duty, and trespass. Essentially, Food Lion argues that the journalists lied to get inside. That's the fraud. They also claim they breached a duty to be good employees and then snooped around in non-public areas without permission. That's the trespass. This lawsuit becomes Food Lion Inc. v. Capital Cities ABC, and it soon turns into a high-profile courtroom showdown. In 1996, a North Carolina jury sides with Food Lion. The verdict is stunning. ABC is found liable on multiple counts: fraud, trespass, breach of the duty of loyalty, because the producers weren't being loyal employees when they secretly served another master, ABC. The jury even slaps ABC with $5.5 million in punitive damages for the fraud element, on top of token compensatory damages. Headlines scream that ABC has been punished for its undercover tactics. For a moment, it seems Food Lion has not only salvaged its pride, but sent a chilling message to investigative journalists everywhere. Lie to get the story, and it could cost you. ABC appeals, and in 1999, the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals dramatically scales back the judgment. The higher court narrows the damages almost entirely. What's left? A grand total of $2 in nominal damages for trespass and breach of loyalty. $2. The price of a cheap burger for what began as a billion-dollar corporation's crusade against a news network. The Food Lion case sent shockwaves through newsrooms. Investigative journalists suddenly weren't so sure where the lines were. An important news gathering technique had been put on trial, quite literally. Even though ABC ultimately paid only a symbolic penalty, along with likely millions in legal fees to defend the case, the legal victory for Food Lion cast a long shadow. Reporters and editors spoke of a chilling effect, the fear that undercover projects might lead to lawsuits, which in turn made some news organizations think twice before greenlighting the next hidden camera expose. After Food Lion, that cautionary note rang louder. Undercover journalism wasn't dead, but it was on notice. By the late 2000s, undercover journalism was evolving yet again. Traditional media outlets grew more risk-averse after Food Lion, but a new breed of activist journalists was rising to take up the mantle.
So joining us on the couch, he's dressed exactly in the same outfit that he wore to these Acorn offices up and down the eastern seaboard. This is what you think a pimp looks like.
Armed with cheap cameras, internet platforms, and a crusader's zeal, they operated outside legacy media, and sometimes outside the traditional rules of journalism. No one embodies that trend better than my client, James O'Keefe. In 2009, a young conservative activist named James O'Keefe burst on the national scene with a video sting that would make him famous. O'Keefe and his collaborator targeted Acorn, a national community organizing group that, among other things, assisted low-income people with housing and taxes. What O'Keefe did was audacious. He and Giles walked into several Acorn offices around the country, posing as pimp and prostitute, seeking advice on how to run an illicit business with underage girls. They secretly taped the meetings. On the videos later released, some Acorn staffers appeared to be offering the pair advice. O'Keefe released the videos in September 2009 on Andrew Breitbart's website, and they exploded like a bomb in the media. The footage outraged America. Here was a respected national nonprofit's employees apparently abetting criminal activity on tape. The backlash was swift and devastating for Acorn. Within days, the U.S. Census Bureau and IRS severed ties with the group. Congress voted to cut off its federal funding, and donations dried up. Acorn's reputation was ruined, and it collapsed, filing for bankruptcy and shutting its doors by 2010. For undercover journalism, the Acorn saga was a watershed. A couple of amateurs with a shoestring budget and a provocative plan took down a national organization that had existed for decades.
You know who broke this story? These two.
You're telling me that two kids from the cast of High School Musical 3 can break this story with a video camera and their grandmother's chinchilla coat, and you got nothing?
It was a demonstration of how potent undercover video could be in the age of virality. O'Keefe was lauded by some for speaking truth to power and criticized by others as a dishonest hitman.
All right, don't take this the wrong way. It's really a compliment. James O'Keefe is the last guy, at least convincing people to play these positions.
What's undeniable is that James O'Keefe had found an excellent operation. In the years that followed, O'Keefe would found Project Veritas until they eventually parted ways. Project Veritas and O'Keefe honed their tactics on a variety of targets. National Public Radio executives, one of whom was caught criticizing conservatives on a hidden camera lunch.
On February 22, 2011, two citizen journalists posed as Muslims and visited with two of the top senior executives at NPR.
So we have set aside, I believe, something like $5 million, partly out of concern for the defunding process that the Republicans are trying to engage in.
Teachers' unions, election officials, news reporters, the list goes on. Their modus operandi was unapologetic. They saw themselves as truth seekers, out to expose corruption and bias, often employing ruses and false identities to get their footage. But with notoriety came new legal peril. Unlike mainstream news organizations, which might back off when the legal stakes were high, Project Veritas often tested gray areas of the law. They've been sued for defamation and other torts multiple times by those caught in their stings. They've usually won these cases. And just like Food Lion fought ABC, many targets of Project Veritas have argued in court that these undercover recordings are illegal or obtained through fraud. In 2023, James O'Keefe launched the O'Keefe Media Group, OMG, a new venture designed to be more resilient than his previous organization. OMG explicitly positions itself as an army of citizen journalists. Since its inception, OMG has broken several major stories that illustrate the continued necessity of the undercover method in holding government and corporate entities accountable. One of OMG's most significant recent investigations exposed alleged massive fraud within the federal government's contracting set-aside programs.
So the new contract is basically close to 100 million.
What's the percentage that ATI will retain from that 100 million?
65 for us being the prime, and then 35.
So 65 million?
Yeah.
Yes.
That's a good deal right there.
The investigation focused on ATI Government Solutions. This was a company participating in the Small Business Administration's 8A Business Development Program. The 8A program is designed to award federal contracts to small disadvantaged businesses, including those owned by Native American tribes. The goal is to build economic capacity in marginalized communities. However, OMG's undercover investigation revealed a pass-through scheme where ATI allegedly won hundreds of millions of dollars in no-bid contracts based on its minority status, but performed very little of the actual work.
It sounds like you're a pass-through.
Yeah.
Pass-through. Pass-through.
This case perfectly illustrates the greater truth defense. The bureaucratic complexity of federal contracting makes it opaque to the average citizen.
Man, most people don't even know your ATI name.
But they make good money though.
They make great money.
Without the deception of an undercover reporter who poses an industry insider to elicit the truth, this misuse of taxpayer funds intended for disadvantaged communities likely would have continued indefinitely.
Hey, God bless America. And here's the flying under the radar, right?
As newer journalism faces these legal hurdles, legislators in various states have tried to preemptively shut down certain kinds of undercover investigations with so-called ag-gag laws. These are laws often pushed by the agricultural industry designed to gag undercover journalism investigations on farms and in slaughterhouses. They typically criminalize gaining access to an agricultural facility under a false pretense or secretly filming once inside. In other words, these laws didn't just target the tactics, they tried to shatter the dirty mirror entirely, making it a crime to even hold it up. The legal fight over ag-gag has been intense. Activist groups, often teaming up with traditional press freedom advocates, have challenged the laws in court, arguing that they criminalize core news gathering speech and thus violate the First Amendment. The outcomes have been largely successful. Some ag-gag laws have been struck down in whole or in part by federal courts, and others have been upheld. For example, courts invalidated broad portions of Idaho's and Utah's ag-gag statutes as unconstitutional restrictions on speech. Just recently, in 2023, the Fourth Circuit struck down North Carolina's sweeping property protection law, a kind of ag-gag measure, for similar reasons. On the other hand, the Eighth Circuit upheld parts of a revised Iowa ag-gag law in 2024, reasoning that lying to gain entry can be punished because it's a legally cognizable harm. What this patchwork means on the ground is that undercover journalists and activists operate in a landscape of uncertainty. A hidden camera investigation that might be legally protected free speech in Idaho could land you in criminal court in Minnesota. The First Amendment's boundaries are still being tested and redrawn when it comes to news gathering by deception. We are witnessing the democratization of truth, where the tools of accountability are no longer the exclusive property of legacy media corporations, but are distributed among the citizenry.
There's no one here right now. It's midday on a weekday. If you were to try to go inside, it's completely closed. There's no windows, no nothing. And like I said, they literally spelt the word wrong on their sign. This is open and blatant fraud taking place here inside of Minnesota.
This new media ecosystem is characterized by citizen journalism, decentralized fact-checking, and open source intelligence. In 2026, we see a media landscape where a lone wolf investigator with an internet connection can debunk state propaganda campaigns or expose a corporate environmental crime. This is the positive ending to the story of veiled truth. The public is no longer a passive recipient of news, but an active participant in its verification. And maybe that's what some are really afraid of. This new era of citizen truth seekers is powerful, but it forces us to face a massive uncomfortable question. Is it ever actually okay to use a lie to find the truth? Or are we just creating a world where no one can be trusted, where nothing is private? So I'm handing the gavel to you. You've seen the evidence. You've seen the arrest. Now you be the jury. Who wins? Undercover journalism lives in a moral and legal gray zone. To expose a lie, you often have to tell a lie. To reveal a hidden truth, you frequently must break someone's trust and sometimes dance on the edge of the law. This inherent tension, deception in service of truth, has made undercover reporting both celebrated and vilified. To fully appreciate the role of undercover journalism, we must return to the philosophical foundations. Why is deception sometimes the only moral choice? Legal scholars have long argued that the marketplace of ideas requires the collision of truth and falsehood to function. However, when one side of the market, the powerful, employs systemic lies, propaganda, sealed records, non-disclosure agreements, the market becomes distorted. The undercover journalist injects a counter-lie to correct the distortion. As noted in the law, collisions between truth and falsehood result in greater truth. The undercover journalist precipitates this collision. By forcing the target to reveal their true nature to a fake person, the journalist captures the reality that the target hides from the real public. The deception is a catalyst for the revelation of reality. We should also consider the asymmetry of secrecy. Institutions operate with a presumption of privacy that they often deny to individuals. Think about your work life. Corporations and governments monitor employees, survey citizens, aggregate data. Undercover journalism reverses the panopticon. It turns the camera back on the watchers. Clean methods, legacy media methods, yield the official story, the press release, the prepared statement, the curated image, the story the machine wants you to hear. The dirty method of undercover reporting is often the only way to access the reality of the human condition. Deception, when disciplined by a commitment to public service, is not the enemy of truth. It is often its only bodyguard. Legally, as we've explored, the First Amendment fiercely protects the publication of news, but offers far less protection to the gathering of news. The Supreme Court has drawn that line clearly. The press has no special exemption from laws of general applicability. A reporter has no more right to trespass, steal documents, or invade privacy than any ordinary citizen, even if it's in pursuit of a story. So a journalist who breaks in somewhere or secretly records where it's forbidden can indeed face legal consequences, First Amendment or not. Privacy is another counterweight. We all expect a degree of privacy in certain spaces, our homes, private offices, non-public workplace areas. Undercover journalists often teeter on violating that. Courts recognize an actionable tort called intrusion upon seclusion. Essentially, if you intrude into someone's private sphere in a way that would offend a reasonable person, you could be liable. A classic example, hidden cameras in a person's home are almost always going to be deemed an intrusion, no matter the story. That's why even the boldest TV producers generally stop at the front door. However, in semi-public or business settings, privacy expectations are more limited and much more complicated. If an undercover journalist interacts with you in a context where you choose to speak or act in front of them, can you later claim your privacy was invaded when they report it? It depends. The nuance of these cases often comes down to consent and context. Did the journalists have permission, even if obtained by a lie, to be where they were or to record the way they did? And did they exceed the scope of that permission in some shocking way? It's a delicate calculus. It's something I weigh almost every day for journalists, whistleblowers, documentarians, and troublemakers across America. So where do we go from here? Is undercover journalism an endangered art, hiding in the shadow of lawsuits? Or will it flourish in the hands of independent creators and whistleblowers willing to take the risks legacy media simply won't? One possible future lies in the courts recognizing some limited privilege for news-gathering deception. Legal scholars have argued that if the story is important enough and the method's reasonable, maybe there should be a First Amendment defense. On the flip side, others warn that giving journalists a hall pass to lie would erode everyone's privacy and trust. If it's for a story became a blanket excuse, where would we draw the line? We might wake up in a world where hidden cameras are everywhere and no one knows whom to trust. In a sense, technology is forcing the issue already. We live in an age of ubiquitous recording. Most of us carry cameras every day. The line between journalist and citizen is blurred. When nearly anyone can conduct an undercover investigation, the law and journalistic norms will have to adapt. Will new laws clamp down harder on secret reporting, or will they loosen up to accommodate this reality? What is certain is that the need for undercover work remains. There will always be corners of society, powerful institutions, abusive industries, closed networks that hide malfeasance behind the walls of secrecy. As long as there are locked doors and dishonesty, there will be intrepid souls willing to don disguises or fake names to get the truth for the rest of us. Their methods will make us uneasy, and sometimes rightly so. But the results usually make our world better. From 19th century stunt reporters to the modern citizen investigator, the dirty mirror of undercover journalism has always been our most uncomfortable tool for accountability. By using deception as a catalyst, these reporters force the powerful to reveal their true nature, proving that a well-timed lie is often the only way to reach deeper justice. In an age of curated press releases, the question isn't whether the mirror is clean. It's whether we are brave enough to look at the reality it reflects.